What is boomerang effect? How does it influence our decision-making? In my last video, we discussed the confirmation bias, which is our tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or preconceptions. The boomerang effect shares a common theme of the influence of our perceptions and responses to information. Confirmation bias influences how we process information internally, whereas the boomerang effect focuses on the external influence of persuasive messages. Both mental processes explains why it is so difficult to change deeply held beliefs or attitudes. The boomerang effect is also known as the backfire effect. It's a mental tug of war that is somewhat counterintuitive. Rather than bringing us closer to a middle ground, to a place of consensus, the boomerang effect often pushes us further into our existing beliefs and make us double down on our original beliefs. Why do we have the boomerang effect? We can think of our brain as a protective guardian, always vigilant and ready to safeguard our identities and core beliefs. When we are exposed to counter-evidence or information that contradicts our beliefs, our brain perceives it as a threat to our identity. The threat triggers the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped set of neurons deep in our brain's medial temporal lobe. The amygdala plays a key in processing emotions, especially fear and anxiety. The activation of the amygdala initiates a series of defense mechanisms, one of which is known as cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when confronted with two conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. This dissonance drives us to resolve the conflict, often by dismissing the counter-evidence and embracing our original belief even more strongly, thereby the boomerang effect. The news feed on your social media are filled with opinions that echo your own. It's comforting as you scroll through your news feed and find everyone agrees with you, right? Well, that's digital echo chambers. We become insulated from opposing views. With constant reinforcement, our views become more extreme over time. In an experiment, researchers recruited groups of Democrats and Republicans, all avid Twitter users. They were then incentivized to follow a Twitter bot designed to expose them to opposing political views. After a month, Republicans exposed to liberal views became more conservative, while Democrats exposed to conservative views became more liberal. What about fact-checking? Can it counter the boomerang effect? Well, it depends on at least two factors: our preconceptions and our knowledge level in a particular area. In the same experiment, researchers used the example of Sarah Palin's infamous claims about the so-called death panels during the Affordable Care Act debate. Palin asserted that the proposed healthcare legislation would include government-run death panels that would determine whether people would receive healthcare treatment, including potentially denying life-saving measures based on subjective assessment of their worthiness or cost-effectiveness. Her statement stirred a significant amount of controversy and contributed to the broader political discourse surrounding healthcare reform at the time. In the experiment, participants were divided into two groups. One group was exposed to an article containing Sarah Palin's claim about death panels, while the other group read a fact-checked version refuting Palin's claim. What were the results? Fact-checking worked only for those who either viewed Palin unfavorably or those who viewed her favorably but had low level of political knowledge. However, for politically savvy Palin supporters, the fact-checking had a boomerang effect. They became more likely to believe in the existence of death panels and strongly oppose the Affordable Care Act. This outcome highlights the role of preconceptions and existing political knowledge in influencing how people respond to fact-checking efforts. The boomerang effect poses significant challenges for science communication, particularly when communicating scientific findings. The scientific findings are results of systematic and rigorous investigations. It's important to remember, though, that scientific findings and absolute truth are not the same. While scientific findings represent our best understanding based on available evidence, they do not equate to objective truth. Science, by its nature, is dynamic and continuously evolving. As new evidence emerges, our interpretations and understandings can change. This process is not a flaw of science, but its greatest strength, the ability to adapt and refine our knowledge in light of new evidence. However, this dynamic process of science does not mean we should abandon presenting scientific evidence. Instead, it emphasizes the importance of skillful communication of scientific findings, taking into consideration when and how we present them. Moreover, it's important to stress the importance of not placing unwavering trust in one single piece of scientific evidence. Science relies on replication and corroboration. Replication means conducting the same study and experiment again to validate the original findings and ensure their validity. It helps identify any potential errors or biases in the initial study and strengthens the confidence in the results if they are reproduced consistently. Corroboration means accumulating and comparing findings from multiple independent studies. It establishes the validity and generalizability of scientific findings by examining if consistent results are obtained across different contexts, methodologies, and researchers. Both replication and cooperation are important parts of the scientific process of self-correction. The self-correcting process of science helps to establish the reliability and the validity of scientific findings. In scientific research, each study is conducted to investigate specific questions or hypotheses. The results of a single study are not considered conclusive evidence. Replication and corroboration come into play when multiple studies independently investigate the same or related questions and produce consistent findings. When different researchers or research groups obtain similar results through their studies, it increases the validity and generalizability of those findings. Accumulating and comparing findings from different studies enable scientists to identify patterns, detect potential errors, and refine existing theories or models. This process of replication and corroboration contributes to the advancement of scientific knowledge and helps build a better understanding of the world. Over the self-correcting process of science, we are undoubtedly presented with conflicting findings or new evidence that challenge our existing beliefs or theories. I need to stress the importance of not placing trust in one single piece of scientific evidence. Follow the self-correcting process of science. Be open to different pieces of evidence. Even a popular view held by the scientific community or scientific consensus does not necessarily equate to truth. The consensus is simply an agreement among scientists about an interpretation of the current body of evidence. However, as history has shown us, scientific consensus can and does change as new evidence emerges. Remember, the view that the Earth was the center of the universe used to be the consensus, but it was later replaced by the view that the Earth revolves around the sun. Similarly, protein was once believed to be genetic material, but that consensus was upended by the discovery of the structure of DNA in the 1950s. Does this mean that we should disregard scientific evidence? Absolutely not. It signals the need for a thoughtful approach to information delivery. We must be skillful at choosing the right moment and the right way to introduce counter-evidence. Stay open-minded and be receptive to new information. The evidence should be presented in a way that respects rather than threatens one's worldviews. In discussing sensitive topics like abortion rights, we need to tread carefully. Incendiary statements like, "You're going to hell" or "You're a murderer" only intensify the boomerang effect. Instead, acknowledging shared values like the sanctity of life or personal autonomy can provide a platform for more fruitful and respectful conversations. People may say, "I can't find common ground." My response is, look harder. After all, we are all human beings, and there must be things that we all share, like biological needs, innate needs for power, social affiliation, achievement, and a desire for a better future. By focusing on those shared values, we can build bridges and nurture understanding, even in the face of different opinions. It requires effort and patience, but it is through those genuine connections that we can find common ground and move forward together. The boomerang effect does not just make a conversation difficult, it also makes us particularly susceptible to misinformation, which is inaccurate or false information. Misinformation is different from disinformation, which is created and spread deliberately to deceive. Misinformation can arise from honest mistakes, misunderstandings, or inadequate research. However, whether the inaccuracies were intentional or not, misinformation can significantly distort our understanding of important issues. To counteract the boomerang effect in the context of misinformation, researchers drew inspiration directly from medical science. Just as a vaccine introduces a weaker or deactivated form of virus into the body to stimulate an immune response, the inoculation approach applies a similar principle to information. We can preemptively warn people against misleading tactics, such as clickbait headlines or emotionally charged language. We can also expose people to a weaker version of an argument or piece of misinformation in order to trigger cognitive antibodies, that is, critical thinking and reasoning skills, thereby increasing people's resistance to the more potent misinformation they may encounter later on. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of the boomerang effect. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.